The cloud. Okay. Well, welcome to April, Bar to the Bone. And hi, I'm Sean, your host, sometimes moderator. But this evening, I'm going to let Bethany do most of the talking. And if she runs out of things to say, I do have leading questions to keep going with, just in case we run out of topic ideas.
Oh, okay. I'm ready.
Yeah. And we just had a cohort of BSF people who just came in and did some extra training and certification and for original pronunciation. So let's hear how that went.
So the certification process was kind of wild. Paul Meyer, first of all, is very sweet, of paulmeyer.com, and he does all kinds of accents. It's not just original pronunciation, all flavors of British, Irish, Scottish, Jamaican, Australian. I mean, some that are like if you needed them, that would be a good place to go, but maybe not necessarily something that's popping up, at least in classical works, for classical actors all the time. We don't usually get to go that far afield because classics are pretty well relegated to Europe and Eastern Europe at that. So we got a packet. He got us connected to some resources, shakespeareswords.com, which is the Crystal's online dictionary, and it's got a sound file library. So you can check the pronunciation that you're doing against regular standard British and then against OP. And we had about an hour-long session, a brush-up session, just to get familiar. My last OP production was, I think that was 2016 when we did Antony and Cleopatra.
Sounds about right.
And Madeline had been cast in the King Lear that never was because of COVID, and then Jeff and Aaron, I believe, were in the recast production of King Lear that we were able to put up on stage at the start of this year. All of my years are sort of blurring together. Start of 2020.
I think it was November.
October, November last year.
Okay, last year. Ooh.
We just did it 5 months ago.
Yeah.
With Tom was in it as well, and so was Abigail. And Aaron managed to be in Lear, and both Aaron, Madeline, and I were in the original pronunciation Hamlet. So we had a lot of fun with that. So that was Madeline's and I our first chance to practice it, and Aaron just took to it like a duck to water.
Mm-hmm. She was one of the most accurate, I will say. Paul was the least annoyed with her. And to be fair, he was very generous. But one of the things, in order to pass the formal examination, you're given a piece of text, and then you have, OP has 12 signature sounds that distinguish it from standard British or any other accent that you're working in. And as you scan the text, you have to say, oh, well, this is the, number 4 sound, and this is the number 7 sound. And I've dropped my H's, so that's an A. So there was a notation system. So there was a speaking portion and then this written portion. And when you pass both portions, that's when you're awarded your certification. So it was weird to think about it so academically. For Antony and Cleopatra, we had Val and Chris, who were part of the original 4. It was Val, Chris, Jess, and I think Anne, that were the original 4 to go through this OP certification with Paul. I guess right before we opened Antony and Cleopatra, so sometime 2015, 2016.
And they were way back in the Merchant of Venice original production.
Yes. So when we did Antony and Cleopatra, we were given an audio file of the whole play that Val read out, that she had done the notation and read everything out. And so if we needed to check against something, we were checking back with her recording. And so I'm a ear learner. So that was ideal for me because I have something to match to and something to kind of soak in my cerebellum. Was that a similar process that you guys had for Hamlet or for Lear?
It was similar. We had a lot of people for, I'm not sure about Lear. I know that for Hamlet, we had quite a few people that were already familiar with it. And we, could look it up and do the IPA translation and knew how to make those sounds. And I know that in my own experience, there were certain sounds that I had never actually made before.
Yeah.
And taught me, here is how you make this sound with your mouth, and gave me like ideas and words to help me practice and get there. It's a struggle to sometimes just make the sound, even though you can hear it, but then replicating it isn't the same. But our process was go through, here is your text, here is a recording of your lines if you need it, here is how you translate the whole thing. And there was a script that we could look through to go, okay, what are the symbols I'm looking for this? And a few of us had the Oxford Dictionary done by David Crystal. So we had all kinds of resources and all kinds of help and assistance and backup. And repeatedly, don't worry, we will help you, was the catchphrase. And I think that was probably the same for Lear. And just, if this is a part that you're struggling with, let's get this through. And of course, there's always, we know about 90% of it, we're not expecting everything to be perfect. We're going to aim for it, but we're not going to expect it. But I imagine certification is a whole nother process, because you have to know, not only have to do it for yourself, but how to get that pronunciation for somebody else and how to get them through it. So
yeah, I think that's the most daunting for me, and how I learn and how I work, to go through and be identifying those sounds for someone else. Do you have a question?
It's worth noting that Marshall and Tom, at least, treated the OP sort of like fight choreography. Every night you have a fight drill to get it into your head, and every night we'd have an OP drill where we practice all the signature sounds. So it was very professional. It was very much like a fight master would do, only with words.
Yeah.
And I find for myself, when I'm working in an accent, no matter what the accent is, I try to have like a touch base phrase, because in everything that's going on when you're acting, you're connecting with your scene partner, you're remembering your words, you're remembering to shape them in your mouth according to the accent, all of that stuff. So sometimes you get a little out of your head or a little unfocused, and you feel the accent sort of sliding out of your control. And so when I do French, my catchphrase is, of course, Mathieu. And when I fall out of it, and then I say that to either out loud or sometimes to myself, then that kind of puts me back in where my mouth should be, where it needs to sit sort of in my mouth, how the sounds are hitting against my teeth. So I absolutely find having a phrase. One of my friends, Keegan, and he works at the Maryland Renaissance Festival, and his catchphrase for he plays a pirate, and it's Jeffrey Rush, Tortuga. And then he's like ready to go.
So yeah, that's so I'm going to go ahead and lead with a quick question. Why a cohort?
Ooh, a cohort. We wanted a small group of people that were already within the BSF orbit, that were on board with our general performance philosophy, which is available on the website. If you're listening, you can go to BaltimoreShakespeareFactory.org and acquaint yourself with our performance philosophy. But it's direct address, it's lights on, cross gender, blind gender casting, all of those things that take us as close as we can manage to what you might experience at a period accurate Shakespeare. So we wanted people who are already sort of in the game in terms of what BSF stands for and what our niche is in this market. And with the help of Jess Behar, who was the previous acting artistic director, she and I sort of planned a season that could be a little bit COVID proof. So that meant we wanted to keep things small. We wanted to blend between digital and in person. And as we weren't sure exactly what the numbers were going to do this early in the year, our first offering we thought would be safest if we could manage it in the digital sphere and the virtual space. So knowing that we wanted to keep the group small and that we wanted to keep the group connected to BSF and with people who were already familiar, because the certification process was going to be a little bit expedited, we spitballed and tossed out some names. There was a period of time where we thought about holding an audition, but just for ease of process this first go round, and I would like to see the OP cohort be something that maybe doesn't happen every year, but every other year. Because as actors do, we move, we change gears, sometimes we change careers entirely. And that's what happened to our previous cohort of certified OP actors. Some of them left the state, some of them moved on from BSF, some of them have day jobs and sort of in the pandemic have left acting altogether. So there were 4 of us in the cohort. I was in it also, but I did not. I chose not to certify for a couple of reasons. One, I have moved away from the area and I felt like it was a better investment to spend that money in certification. We paid for the certification, BSF as a organization paid for certification and did offer a small stipend to the performers for their time. And that was sort of the deal of the cohort. So that's how we came to that. So we've got 3 freshly minted Baltimore local, highly enthusiastic OP experts that can function either as part of the cast or part of the production team in terms of coaching. And they have their choice over the next 3 years or so that they perform in at least one OP and that they coach at least one OP production going forward. That was the arrangement we came to.
That's awesome. Because that's, I mean, just having experience with original pronunciation, a cast going through the process is going to wind up coaching and helping each other, saying, okay, no, let me help you with this, or how do I get through this part, or how do I pronounce this? And it's, help translate the IPA that is in the dictionary. That
oh yeah, the IPA, that's like a whole, there should have been a class before the class about IPA, because there's this chart of vowel sounds and it's sort of like a parallelogram with the short side on the bottom, and it's got this sliding range of like A to E sound and where it sits against, like in your resonation cavity in your mouth, and is it like an A sound but with E lips, and we probably could have used a sort of a crash course on IPA before we got there. But what I noticed, there were 2 things that really struck me as we were going through the certification process with Paul and in the recording process that we started last night, and that you will get to hear the results of tomorrow. We are all a fan of that pirate sound. So a lot of times when we talk about OP and OP being a rhotic dialect, I think what we all wish it meant was hard piratey R's, because that has come to be part of our sound. And sounds like ow, we like that full open round sound, or though or lard. We like that round gur sound. But what really that means is that in received pronunciation, RP, the current modern British accent, they had decided to get rid of R's. So instead of work, it's work, right? You kick out all the R's, you don't pronounce them. So what rhotic really means is that the R is there. it's just there. It's not extra. And so Paul was constantly reminding us, right? Okay, that's a little more of a normal O. That's a little softer of an R.
Yeah.
To kind
O
of
is not two parts. It's just one single pure O.
yeah, just Lord. Or, you know, maybe a little bit, but loud. Too far. That's too far. It's that's not, you know, that's not. So we were all a little bit frustrated because joking around, you were like, you know, 2022 OP cohort, the cohort that's trying too hard. You know, we were wanting to make it more present than what is called for or what we learned is appropriate based on the training that we received with Paul. And in that Shakespeare's Words website, any word that you're unsure of, you can look up and there's a little audio file and it will say it to you in RP and then it will say it to you in OP. And sometimes it would be, they would say the word and it's the same in OP. And then they would say it exactly the same as what we would hear in standard British. And we were like, man, that's the same too. That's the same too. You know,
Yeah.
what have we been doing?
I was always amusing whenever I would say a word and I would go a little bit too far and I just be corrected with just the simple, no change.
No change. No, that one's the same.
It's just king. That's it. No king.
Queen was another one. We all wanted to, you know, Queen. Too far. Just Queen. It's not that bad.
It's interesting to learn that you can keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go overboard. And
I was wondering so I'm not a native Baltimorean. I'm a firm Midwesterner. So I have like a wide, apparently, I don't hear it, but apparently I have like a wider, flatter sound.
Yeah.
So I wondered if that tendency towards like a taller, more open sound is sort of indicative of native Baltimoreans and like East Coasters. So it's like a little bit of East Coast is creeping into because it was consistent across all of us. We were all doing it.
That whole Baltimore Hun thing. I don't know. I mean, I grew up in Baltimore, so I don't hear it myself. You know, I don't hear my own accent, and I probably do have one. That's very Baltimore, but it's suburban Baltimore, so it's not like deep, you know, Glen Burnie, Pigtown, or Fells Point or something like that. Which, when you're around enough, you get to go, oh no, that's a region of Baltimore. It's like if you were really careful and doing a Henry Higgins kind of thing, you would hear like which area of Baltimore a person was from and where they grew up and where they went to school.
Oh yeah, you can.
And so that's, I mean, there's definitely a thing that happens with that. And you get that realize like, oh no, a pure vowel sound is just, it's almost nothing. You're not glossing over it, but you're hitting it without any other accents on it. And that was kind of hard for me to learn when I was doing it.
Mm-hmm. So. And it's hard to be consistent when you're rewriting over an incorrect habit. Yeah. It's so easy to kind of slip back into that sound. And there's something about it that feels good in the mouth too, if that's not too weird to say.
No, that's exactly
that like open, more resonating sound. It just feels good. It sounds good. It's come to be the sound that we as BSF have associated because that's been a habitual sound. So I'm curious to see going forward how we address that, if we keep a little bit of it, if that's our, you know, Baltimore style, if we're able to correct it 100%. And then where's the room as a performer? You know, if I'm a little lower class, then can I have that taller O? Can I have that wider, you know, and that's the line between the accuracy of the accent and acting and creativity and bringing a character to life.
And I think one of the nice things that we're going to have from having this cohort and possibly another one in another couple of years, or maybe even next year, who knows, is we get to have that refresher of, here is this baseline of what we should be hearing. Let's remind ourselves. And it's always good to go back, even when you're an expert, and take the beginner classes.
Absolutely. Basics never hurt anybody. And my
And
dance
all over
teachers
there.
were always one to reinforce that idea, and I have really internalized it. Go ahead, Tom.
Have any of you done Paul Meyer's voicing Shakespeare seminars?
I don't think
I've
any
done
of
them.
us had done them, but I do
I've done
want
them
to do it.
twice. I've done them twice, and he includes OP in each of his seminars, at least a little bit of it.
Mhm.
So he mainly focuses on the acting, on conveying meaning clearly, and extends that into OP,
Mhm.
and it's really valuable. It's a wonderful course.
I'm going to look that up later, and I'm going to probably add it to the list of things we put in the videos and stuff.
Yeah, I absolutely want to take it. And the more you hear it, the more, and for anyone who's performed an OP, and I believe all of us have at this juncture, the way that our philosophy at BSF is like so rooted in the text, and like everything you need about the character, about the situation, about your state of mind, like everything is there. And I just find OP to really enhance and support that. And it's like a joy to be able to work in it. It's a joy to be able to say, like, we're the world leaders of, productions in OP, because we are.
Still are.
Still are. I think at this point, people would have to do 2 a year for a couple of years to catch up.
And
But yeah, we get, there's an OP scholar, I believe, in Italy. And every now and again, she emails me and says, hey, do you have any archival footage of Merchant of Venice? Or, I'm studying and I'd like to hear more. What can you find for me to listen to? And to be able to, with the cohort and our recording of an abridged Winter's Tale, it's nice to be able to say, like, I'm contributing to someone's scholarship. I'm making it so that they can continue to study and learn about something that they also find really fascinating.
I'm available for coaching, by the way.
Okay, I stand informed.
I've been working with OP for 15 years and intensively for the last 2.
Mhm.
So I think I've got a pretty good handle on it.
Mm-hmm.
so
Speaking of getting a handle on things, this was something else that occurred to me in my studying, in my prep for the show, and in my studying. I do intend to take the certification exam later this summer. But I always thought, like, when I'm doing accent work, it's like English to French, English to British, standard American English to wherever I'm going to. But because David and Ben Crystal are British, and the way that they notate the vowels is rooted in British English, how we really need to be thinking about OP is English to British to OP. So the signature sounds of OP are the ones you change, but everything else is the regular British sound, which is different than American. So one of the things that's particularly confusing for me, I'm still working on it, is the trap bath split. So in British, trap is trap, but bath is bath. So some A's are the trap A, this, white American A,
Yeah.
and some A's are the bath A, already. Bath, that's another one. There's afternoon, that's another one. So in the signature sound, you change the trap A a different way than you change the bath A. But if you're just looking at A from an American standpoint, that's the same A. So there, for me at least, there was some confusion until I started thinking, I need to think about this as British English.
Paul called me out on that. He called me out on that flat A. He's like,
yeah,
no, that's American, and
yeah,
it's fine as far as it goes, but let's not do it.
yeah. We have the same A, but their A is distinctive, and even now it's changing, or like the attitude about it is changing. That the Bath A is kind of snobby and posh, and
yeah, which is why that IPA notation is so important, because it will notate whether it's one type of A or towards the other type of A. And
yes, it does.
Ben and David are going to do that A in one way, and we're going to look at it and go, oh, that's an A. That's
Yeah,
an A.
same A. And it's not.
There's something I listen to obsessively, like fall asleep to, and that's David Crystal doing the book of Matthew from the Tyndale Bible. And the Tyndale accent is 1540s. So there's things that are even more archaic than OP, like light is licht. There's, Kenite is the K is pronounced, but most of it's pretty much like OP. But listening to him read the book of Matthew is the closest thing to a time machine I have ever heard. It's like it's no big deal. It's not like, hey, I'm going to do an accent. It just sounds like somebody talking through a time machine. It's wonderful.
Yeah,
And it's not
very talented
expensive either. It's on Audible, so it's relatively cheap.
So let's see, learning styles. You have not taken the certification test yet. I did get some info from Madeline about how you go through it, and that luckily Paul Meyer is not like a Taskmaster kind of teacher.
No, and he was
wants you to
very,
succeed. We want
yes,
you to
he
succeed.
does. He does. And after we had our session, he reached out and he said, like, hey, he said, I think you could pass. I truly do. I said, I think it would be a near thing though. So
yeah,
let's talk about what we can do going forward. Do you just need some more time? And what I asked him for, and he very kindly provided, was, do you know how in Sudoku they give you you have the problem that you do yourself, and then you can flip to the back and check your answers.
Right.
So that's what he did for me. He correctly notated like 3 or 4 speeches and then gave me unnotated copies so that I could do my best, and see where things were and what I thought, and then compare that back to the accurate, notation. So I haven't done it yet because I haven't gotten back to it. But
he doesn't require perfection. I know, listening to the tapes, that when I passed, I know I did like a B minus job, on that one recording, but I passed. So,
Well, I imagine it's like a driver's test, right? You don't have to get 100%. Right. You just have to get, one better than the number that doesn't pass. Yeah, he has a very generous spirit, and I wouldn't hesitate to work with him again.
Sweet man.
Yeah, you're not really going to hurt anybody by doing really bad OP. You might make some people not
annoyed
hear it again, but
yeah.
Funny you should mention that. I've been searching all over YouTube for OP and come across some stunningly bad OP. Oh my Lord. But I listen to them to hear what it is they're doing wrong. Mm-hmm. And one of the things is, since the vowel sounds are new, they tend to draw them out. They like they hit them really, really hard. Make, it's obviously they're having fun with it, but it doesn't sound all that natural. And the other thing is the consciousness, being conscious of, of doing OP. The people back then weren't doing OP, they were just talking.
Yeah.
So it's got to be kind of, no big deal. It's got to just kind of roll out.
Mm-hmm.
If you stutter while doing this, yeah, that's a good hint that maybe it's not where it should be.
There's a fine line between like too fast and too slow. I tend toward a faster rate of speech, so I give myself less time to luxuriate, just because I'm so used to like hearing the snapping from the darkened auditorium of like, pick it up, where let's not drag this out.
I know what Paul would say. There's a speed texture that should match the meaning. Mm-hmm. So some places can be very fast, and some places should be a little bit more thoughtful and drawn out.
But I think the key is not to treat it too precious. It's just like you said, Tom. It's the daily speech of these people, and where acting dictates, it's important to luxuriate or take time. That's the time you do if you've earned it, and if you haven't earned it, then keep it moving. Particularly with a radio production where we don't have a lot of visual support. To really feed those pauses, you can't see the thinking, you can't see the planning going, so I'm like, we got to keep it keep it. And one of my professors, my college professor, she used to tell us if you do it fast, they won't remember that it sucked until they get out to the parking lot. So just like.
And luckily, luckily we're doing this with Shakespeare. We're not just like doing a bunch of words or trying to like do a performance of like somebody talking to each other. We've got iambic pentameter to help us with that. So we've got that rhythm, that rhythm that we can fall back on to go, okay, are we keeping a pace? Are we actually, riding the wave of the iambic pentameter as well as the language and as well as the sounds? And it's, when it works, it's magic.
But it's been described as a heart mimicking the heartbeat, but as we all know, the heart speeds up and slows down.
Yeah, that too.
It isn't just
So what, Abigail, unless you want to relay your experiences with OP and Lear or other productions.
Sure. When I signed on for King Lear and OP, I had never done OP before. I had heard it before, and when I was in university, my voice coach or my voice professor, presented some information about it as like if you're interested, you can try this thing, but I'm not going to teach it to you because I don't know it. So, which is fine. I'm glad that she didn't teach me something she didn't know. But I only had a very vague understanding of what it was, a very intellectual sort of, oh, this is what people say Shakespeare would have sounded like. And then as I got into it, one of the things that I remember about our text workshop weekend for Lear, when we first started talking about the OP stuff, and when we first heard a snippet of it, was just saying that the accent that it sounds the most like is the accent that's closest to your heart. And so I heard Irish because part of my family is Irish, and I played it for my partner, and they heard Scottish because part of their family is Scottish. And just seeing how different people related to it was really interesting because we're all learning the same dialect and we're all working together on this project, but it means a different thing to each of us. We have our own personal connection to it. That was really cool as we were going through it, and it was a great experience. I'm so happy that I did it. And the show was great, and I had a great time there too. But the OP stuff is stuff I'll take forward for sure.
That was one of my first things when I got to see Othello was, okay, I'm the first minute or so I had to adjust, but once I we're stripping away everybody's accents. We're going to have one way of talking, and it's going to be consistent, and then you're going to understand everything now. You're not going to be going, oh, I didn't understand that guy because he had a weird accent, or he was doing some weird version of British received pronunciation, or this guy's doing Irish and this guy's doing Scottish, which works in Henry V. But
it's kind of the joke,
but and Welsh too.
Yeah, that's Merry Wives.
Yeah.
That random Welsh minister.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
Yeah.
Fluellen and Henry V, Fluellen's Welsh.
Yeah.
Well, that was interesting. After each performance was done, we'd hear people in the audience talking about, wow, that was really weird. I hadn't heard anything like that before. Did you know what they were saying in this one scene? Because I couldn't understand. And all of us backstage are like, what do you mean you couldn't understand? It makes perfect sense. But we've been working for it for months. And everything made sense, of course, because we were all living in that same world, bringing people along for the ride, inviting them into that OP world. Sometimes worked really well, and sometimes didn't. And, that's just part of the challenge of it.
Yeah. And I think part of the Kestrel as well, it is a reclaimed church space. So the best acoustics is that altar 20 feet behind the stage.
Backstage, yeah.
So we're sort of working against in an accent that can be round and with long vowels in that rounded space. Sometimes it just does this in the space.
I'm working on it. I've done a couple of favors for Michael Kerr at Bay Acoustics. who's mentoring me on one of the things he does professionally is church spaces. Church spaces are famous for having horrible acoustics. And he's like, oh yeah, you could put absorption there and dispersive there and some clouds. And I was like, yeah, we can do that. And instead of buying the expensive ones that they sell professionally, commercially, a lot of it could be made. We could whip some up for cheap instead of buying the $1,500 ones.
Yeah. So, and I think too, we can do something about that. If we keep to the rhythm of iambic pentameter, if we don't luxuriate in the vowels and we keep it tight in the mouth, if that's the way I can describe it, I think we can help. I think there's two solutions to that. I think there is absolutely a physical solution to the roundness of the space, but I think that's part of, at least what I learned, is that it's way less luxurious than we're imagining. It's way more the same than we're imagining. So half of it is the physical space and the sound, and then half of it is just making sure that we keep the accent as tight as possible. And between those two things, I think we could really get to a place where the audience is with us for the whole ride. It's interesting, Abigail, you said about the Scottish and the Irish. Downton Abbey was out while I was doing my OP show, so I heard Yorkshire.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. So I was like, this sounds just like, the downstairs people. This is such a similar sound. So go ahead.
One
Tom.
thing about achieving that clarity that I noticed in Anthony Hopkins's King Lear, if you get a chance to see the video, Anthony, you listen to him next time you hear him, listen to how he owns every word right to the last letter. He doesn't clip anything off like we do, especially Americans. We talk fast and we clip things off, but he owns each and every word. And every consonant is heard by the audience, and it's emotionally so projective. He's a genius. But I noticed him doing that, and I've been trying to do it.
So I want to move on while we've got a little bit of time. Let's talk about the radio play, how it's been cut, what we can expect, challenges, changes, etc.
Oh gosh, Winter's Tale. So the first time I got to do Winter's Tale was with a group of high school students, and they had about a 90-minute cut, and we worked for about 6 or 8 weeks in the summer. So I was already familiar with the script and already had a fair idea from watching them what absolutely was unnecessary and what could get, and that's not a statement on them, just sometimes it cuts too long. So when I cut, I tend to start with whole scenes. So Tom DeLeese, our founding artistic director, had a way that he liked to cut, but I found it a little bit inaccurate for my purposes. So the way that I prefer to cut is that on average, a professional actor speaking Shakespeare speaks about 135 words a minute. So whatever minutes I'm trying to get to times 135, and that's the words I need. So it's easiest so I had a cut that was about half the words, and then I needed about half of that half. So it started with whole scenes. So start with subplots. So basically everything to do with Autolycus, that had to go. It's like, we don't have time. It's gotta go. There's a couple of scenes with the shepherd and the sun, or the shepherd and the clown, depending on the translation that you have. A lot of that had to go. And then some of the scenes, because it is a radio edit, there's a radio announcer that I do. I'm doing my best. What is that accent that all the radio announcers do when they talk like this? So I'm doing my best.
1940s radio play, advertising.
Yeah. So that gives me the chance to summarize what's missing that's pertinent. So any whole total subplots, we don't even talk about. But to cut through scenes that are missing, like there's a scene with Paulina and another character, and they're in the jail, and the queen has just had the baby, and they're talking about, well, look, we can sum that up. The queen had the baby in jail, and her husband refuses to see it, right? And that was, 500 words or 800 words that I could just get rid of. So using that radio format to sort of fill in the gaps. And then just internal cuts. When you're on stage and the audience has something to look at, you can stand and park and bark, which is a theater colloquialism for just standing there and talking. And that's interesting enough because you can move around, you're feeling it in your body, but on the radio, no good. So I tried to keep things clipped, and the times where characters really do have a lot to say. I tried to make sure that those were the most important things to say, and to really distribute those longer speeches evenly. Leontes has a lot to say. During the trial scene, Hermione has a lot to say. Polixenes, sometimes he can wax a little poetic unnecessarily. So internal cuts, and then whole scene cuts, and then subplot cuts, and then you get to something that's about 50 minutes, 45, 50 minutes or so.
So we'll get to see just like what's left when we hear it.
Yeah, the main story. So it's, in Cecilia, then Leontes gets all suspicious. Polixenes and Camillo head for Bohemia, the trial. We get to see the scene with Paulina where she's like, "This is your baby," and then he tells his servant, "It's not my baby, and I dash its brains out, but you should take it to, abandon it in the country." And then it jumps straight to Polixenes and Camillo. "My son's been missing. What's going on?" And then we do the sheep shearing, and we meet Perdita and Perdita, however, what makes you happy, and what scans, mostly what scans. And then they get on the boat, they go back to Cecilia. There's a couple of scenes there, and then we finish it up within Paulina's gallery and what Leontes discovers there. So if you haven't heard or seen Winter's Tale, you could Google it, but I'm not going to give it away. So we really do stay with that main plot, with the main characters, the royalty, sort of the arc of the lowborn characters, that it just, for time's sake, it had to go.
Right.
If you ever feel anxiety about cutting, it's helpful to remember that at the time these things were being written, they were in an entertainment desert. They weren't surrounded by entertainment 24 hours a day like we are. So they wanted to draw things out and elaborate on them and say them 5 different ways. So, telling the story, if you tell a story well, the fact that some of it's missing does not matter.
I think we also have a less distracted audience, right? There's not a prostitution and fruit selling and all other kinds of shenanigans and drunk people, although sometimes the audience is a little sauced, and that's not the worst thing. So there's a couple of reasons behind it, but early in my career as a teaching artist, I lost the ability to be precious with the poetry, particularly in student circumstances, and also in circumstances like this where you don't have the support of something visual, where it's just audio. As long as the story is there, if they're really that intrigued, it gives them a little something to discover when they go back and read it on their own. It's like, oh, there was more that I didn't get to see, and how cool is this? So that's my spin on it. I leave the missing plot things as a little carrot for people to go back and discover.
Bethany, did you use any sound effects like slamming doors or anything like that?
Because I decided not to fiddle with live actor-made sound effects while I was recording, that means, yes, I do get to go back and put them in after the fact. So there will be some booing in the crowd. There will be some rattling chains. There will be some magical whooshing.
Love it. Love it.
And I might even play a little bit with underscoring with music, certain scenes, and maybe some musical transitions under the radio announcer. So I do have a little bit of room to play with the sounds that you'll be hearing. And thanks to the BBC and their free sound effect archive that can be used for non-commercial purposes, There's all kinds of stuff in there. So
Great. Great.
yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you all for joining, participating. And let's see, this is April. So I've got 2 more Bar to the Bones scheduled for this year.
Mhm.
June, I have a guest presenter, and we're going to be looking at ambition and prophecy and witches. That's going to be fun. And then later on in August, we're going to be doing a exploration of Shakespeare's music, because we tend to use the modern music of our time. What was the modern music of Shakespeare's time? And we're going to explore that a little bit, because we don't get to very often. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then, of course, October is the month of Miriam.
The month of Miriam.
So
Yeah. So what's going to be so fun is we are having sort of audience participation reading. So we will have 2 or 3 professional actors to sort of handle the heavy lifting. And then we're going to chamber read this sucker and talk about it. So if you want to do a little reading, little guest spot, absolutely come on in. And we're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, I get to say, yeah, Elizabeth Carey's, not only being the only Jacobean author that was published and that we still have extant and that we know about,
Mhm.
but having read through it, the entire thing is iambic pentameter.
Yeah.
And that's just
It was popular.
fun.
Mhm. And she wrote it as a chamber play. So it's like, come over to my house. We'll have some dinner. We'll
We'll
sit
do a Zoom
down
reading.
and we'll read this thing out, and that'll be our entertainment. I mean, where is that? I'm bringing that back. I'm just having friends over for dinner, drinks, and play reading. I would love that if that came back.
Gonna be
Yeah.
awesome.
That's why we love Renaissance music. It was people got around with each other, with their friends. Nobody got paid and nobody bought a ticket. They entertained each other out of the goodness of their hearts, and it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Oh, and in the chat room, I experimented. I also didn't have the patience to learn the ILA. So I experimented with just phonetically spelling the OP.
Mm.
Just writing it in regular letters. It's something that approximates the sound of OP. And you might try it. I've had a pretty good success with it for
I'll
rehearsal.
put that in the text of the YouTube video when that's posted, just so people can practice it and take a look.
Cool.
So awesome. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining, and check the website. Go ahead and make a donation. We'll send the URLs and the streaming links out to people, and we'll see you online and hopefully in person very soon.
Thank you.
You can leave my donation stand there, by the way, Sean.
I will. You can change it anytime you want.
That's good. It's fine.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.